presents an audiobook theater podcast. I am your host and writer behind 99geek.ca, Andrew Geczy, and this is being recorded on April 11th, 2021. It's a Sunday, which is usual, I suppose. My goal in life has always been to write for television, but it's a goal I've had little luck so far in attaining, so instead I've resorted to self-publishing novels on Amazon, but writing the monthly chapters like episodes of TV shows that people can download at patreon.com/99geek, or just 99geek.ca now, I can just say that, 99geek.ca. Every chapter is released in 4 parts, a teaser in 3 acts, and every month features a different book spanning both science fiction and fantasy and every genre in between. That's right, I wrote all the books featured on this podcast, trying to make ends meet in what feels like a poverty nightmare. I'm doing all of this alone, living off unemployment insurance. I don't have a budget, I don't have a team, no editors or producers. I have no backup, no support. I'm completely alone, pro bono, with nothing but my passion for telling stories. And thus I ask you not to judge me or my work or my production values too harshly. I'm doing the best I can, trying to wear all the hats. Tonight we'll be reading from Phase 3 of Season 1 of 99% Geek, a chapter of a book entitled Princess Myrandae and the City of Tomorrow. Remember, you can follow along at 99geek.ca. Chapters are somewhat standalone, but at least make sure you start on week 1 for the recap. This is not week 1. This is chapter or episode number 1 of Princess Myrandae and the City of Tomorrow, entitled The Princess, the Thief, and the Vampire. And so we continue with week number 2. The first character, Colbrot, will be played by Deckard Cain tonight. He's from the Diablo series. Hello, stay a while, ambition. Alright, we got this. Let's do this. And we begin. Are the gravity stabilizers malfunctioning? Colbrot asked the princess as she bent low and got on her hands and knees. He checked the settings on the handlebar-shaped controls he was holding tight to as their transport continued to streak through the city. She looked up at him and shook her head as they passed over an arena. A bunch of kids were playing bike ball. It was like the imaginary Earth sport Quidditch, but with flying bikes. And she prayed for fate that none of them got a glimpse of her flying past. I'm good, the princess muttered, just really wishing I was dressed. She really didn't need another scandal. She could imagine the headlines now. Princess caught flying around in PJs. Did she escape the insane asylum? Yes, there were rumors. Rumors why she was no longer in the spotlight? Her neighbors knew the truth, of course, that she hadn't suffered some kind of mental break. That was 100 people, maybe, out of trillions of Goltaxians in the Goltex system. The arena, a small, circular, open dome surrounded by skyscrapers, was soon a distant blur as they continued to zoom through the city, passing buildings so fast that it was hard to focus on any particular one. Hard, but not impossible, as they passed one building with a wide, flat roof upon which stood a number of Goltaxians with their handheld devices out and pointed at the sky. You better not be recording this, the princess yelled angrily at them, as they too became blurs in the distance. It was probably better that they didn't hear her. She looked down at the metal of the transboard, seeing the fuzzy reflection of Colbrot's royal yellow robe. A gentleman would give me his robe, the princess suggested with a pleading smile. These are my advisor robes, Colbrot stuttered. And you have clothes underneath those, right? Mary asked him. Colbrot shook his head. It doesn't matter. You said yourself, Princess Mary begged. You're not even my advisor anymore. So then why should I help you? Colbrot asked, and Myrandae was shocked at the sharp hint of anger in his voice. It was very different from the kindly giving man Miri had known her whole life growing up. Coca-Cola break. Do-do-do-do-do. Coca-Cola break. It's got bubbles. And they support voting rights in America. Where were we? Yes. Even he seemed to know what he'd betrayed too much. Even he seemed to know that he betrayed too much, sorry. His expression softening before her eyes. It's been hard since you left. I can see that, the princess muttered, slowly straightening to her feet. Can you at least fly higher? He obliged her, pulling the transport up and out of the city and up into the clouds. He would have had to bring them up there eventually. It was only there that they could slide into a high-speed gravity lane and hit the really fast speeds impossible at the lower altitudes. And they would need to move fast to get to the palace, nearly 2 astronomical units away past multiple planets and their Dyson Sphere, all contained within their Goltex system megastructure. I've done everything I can, Colbrot explained to her, to hold on to some semblance of voice in system governance. I never asked you to do that, Mary insisted. When I quit, it was supposed to free you too. Someone had to balance out your brother, Colbrot argued. He shrugged. So I never told them that you quit. What? Oh my god, the princess shrieked. She didn't actually say the oh my god. I did that. What? Is like it. I told them you were on vacation, Colbrot said, squirming at the controls. How well did that hold up after the first 100 years? Miri asked her once close friend. Colbrot looked at her with a frown. They never respected me, even when I was speaking for you. The longer you've been missing, the more your brothers have stripped you of all your responsibilities. You mean stripped you of all? You mean stripped you of my responsibilities? The princess corrected him without stammering like I did. Wind rushing past her as they soared through the clouds at a third of the speed of light. He's taken control of most of the fleet, Colbrot continued, though I never let him touch your flagship. Colbrot swallowed deeply, his pointy ears drooping on his head. He used the fleet to wipe out the Torai. What? The princess said again. Beneath and above them, she could see rolling farmlands now, the megastructure made up of plates, with every plate containing a different ecosystem. Cities, suburbs, even farming communities for those who wanted a simpler life. There were plates for forests, plates with swamps, ecosystems of creatures the likes of which Myrandae could only imagine. Each plate was the surface area of a Goltex 3, or Earth-sized planet. And suspended between the thousands of upper and lower plates was 4 of Goltex's 7 planets. The other 3 weren't suitable for colonization, so, when building the megastructure, Myrandae's ancient ancestors tore those planets apart to help make the individual plates. It took a lot more matter than that. Based on the princess's memory of what she'd read in the historical logs, they had completely strip-mined 4 other surrounding dead solar systems, turning their very suns into matter for the megastructure. A couple black holes, too. But there was one surrounding solar system they didn't strip-mine, the Torai system, once their greatest friends and allies. They're all dead? She asked her once advisor. She felt sick just thinking about it. She and the Torai princess had gotten along, or at least talked a few times, over the span of 12,000 years. Now she felt bad she hadn't reached out more. Colbrot nodded solemnly. Your brother convinced the governing council that they would be a threat. To what? Princess Miri asked angrily. To who? They were peace-loving. She didn't have to go on. His expression said it all. They were a threat to him, her brother. He who found peace boring. I tried to stop him, Colbrot insisted. As he spoke, they passed by one of the planets trapped in their megastructure, Goltex 3. She had just been thinking about it earlier. It was the planet they had evolved from, their origin. Try to warn the ushers of the... Sorry. He coughs and takes a drink of Coca-Cola, the drink of liberals everywhere. Remember, in Coca-Cola's America, everyone gets to vote. Coca-Cola. Now back to the show. I tried to stop him, Corbrat insisted. As he spoke, they passed by one of the planets trapped in their megastructure. I already read this, but I'm reading it again. Goltex 3. She had just been thinking about it earlier. It was the planet they had evolved from, their origin. Tried to warn the others of his intentions. Let me try this part of the line again. Plus, I feel like that deserves its own paragraph. All right. Tried to warn the others of his intentions. Much better. Colbrot continued. But without your authority behind me, people have stopped taking me seriously. The princess looked down at her PJs and knew how he felt. Goltex 3 floated, massive and covered in cities and ruins in the sky to their left, held in place with the forces of gravity. It was a marvel to the eye, but dwarfed still by the next orb they were approaching, the Dyson Sphere, at the very center of the Goltex system megastructure. They, the Goltaxians, as a species, had mastered control over the forces of gravity. Without that control, none of this would have been possible. The Dyson Sphere would collapse in on the sun, and its chaotic elements would tear apart the entire megastructure, killing multiple trillions of people. Excuse me. Coca-Cola makes you burp for freedom. That was a freedom burp. Instead, the Dyson Sphere they'd built around 900,000 years ago siphoned the gravitic forces of the sun, manipulating and channeling those forces both to hold the planets in place, as well as to create speedy gravity lanes throughout the sky that vehicles could essentially fall into and zip across the megastructure in minutes instead of conceivably years. What about my father? The princess asked, staring absent-mindedly at the Dyson Sphere as they passed. It was a large, understatement of the millennia, metal sphere, made out of plates similar to those of the surrounding megastructure. There were small cracks between that allowed some of the sun's light to pass through, enough to warm the surrounding structure. The magnetic shields kept cohesion of the sphere together, along with the manipulated gravitic forces. The surrounding plates above and below the Dyson Sphere were industrial-focused, with power converters and capacitors and stations controlling and converting the output and either storing it or using it to run the megastructure. Your father isn't as active in politics as he once was, Colbrot told her. A lot has changed in a couple hundred years. The princess found that unlikely. Ruling was all my father ever cared about, Princess Miri argued with him, more even than being my father. Surely 200 years isn't long enough for that to change. He's tired, Myrandae, her once advisor muttered, and for a moment he gave her pause. She wasn't used to him not calling her princess. Had he just forgotten? Then give him a sedative, the princess suggested bitterly. Let him sleep it off. Of life. He's tired of life. Princess Myrandae frowned. So, when you say he's dying, you mean... Colbrot let go of the controls to give her his full attention. He didn't need to be at the controls in a gravity lane anyway. The only direction to go was forward. He's asked for the final death, Colbrot confirmed for her. Yes. Why would he do that? She asked, unsure why anyone would choose such a thing willingly. There was so much to live and experience in the universe, enough for 1,000,000 lifetimes, and some of it was even fun doing twice. And she had always known her father to be kind and giving, too giving, really, which is why she had known so little of him during her formative centuries. She more knew him from the legends and the history texts and the news. He was once more like her brother was now, that was to say angry and glory-seeking, until he'd grown more docile and passive in his older years. He'd turned his attention to helping advance the surrounding nations, nations like the Torai. He had spent so many years trying to invest in them. Could he really be okay with Jamet? Right. Could he really be okay with Jamet wiping them out? That was a new word I had never said out loud before. Sorry. Not really a word, a name. It was a slow decline, Colbrot continued to explain to her as their transport approached the palace. I didn't want to believe it at first. I thought maybe he was just going through a slump. But his depression kept getting stronger. It hung over him like a cloud, weighed on his thoughts. He used to enjoy playing sports with his friends, but instead he started canceling his events, all events. He stopped going out, stopped showing up to meetings. After a while, he wouldn't even call in from home. He eventually stopped even leaving his bed. The Goltaxian Palace, massive in its own right, towering in the distant, far corner of the Goltex system. It was built into the very final plate and towered all the way up to almost touch the other plate above it. That felt weird. I'm going to change that to a semicolon. Solves everything. Coated in a highly reflective tempered metal, the entire massive spire shined like a huge spiky mirror. And at all times, colored lights were shined on it to truly make it look magnificent, as if it glowed every color of the rainbow. Though currently the only colors being shown on the palace were blue and purple, usually a sign the royal family was in mourning. She would very rarely see those colors, maybe once in 1,000 years. Coke break, do, Coke break. The bubbles are melting. Sorry, I'm okay. Defeat the forces of Diablo by drinking a Coca-Cola. Imagine Blizzard heard this. It's like, you're sued! Alright, where were we? She would very rarely see those colors, maybe once in 1,000 years. That's the purple and the blue. Grabbing the controls again, Colbrot descended them from the gravity lane, swinging low to fly over the final city before the royal grounds. As they passed a floating billboard, the city alight with flashing signs and advertisements, Princess Miri managed to catch a glimpse of a scrolling news feed. Princess finally released from rehab? ? Miri read aloud to Colbrot. Spelling out ? Somehow makes it more offensive. News travels fast in the Goltex system, Colbrot reminded her as they passed the low walls to fly over the royal gardens. The blue and purple shining palace loomed over them, looking more foreboding than she ever remembered it. I have reason to believe it was your brother, Jamet, that started those rumors pertaining to your mental health. Oh, excuse me. Princess Miri felt a cold chill snake down her back. Her ears flattened to her face as her large eyes squinted at the landing pad they were heading towards. Why would he do that? I think he's grown comfortable, Colbrot explained, to the expanded power he's been granted in your absence. He's been since turning minds and opinions against you in the unlikely circumstance of your eventual return. The landing pad they approached jutted out a good 10 stories up from the ground, the general front entrance for royalty. The lower levels were mainly for staff and security. Colbrot landed the transport softly on the landing pad, and Princess Myrandae stormed off the board and crossed the landing pad to the entrance of the fortress. Hold up! Colbrot yelled after her, jogging as fast as his old man legs could carry him. By the gray in his hair and beard, He looked almost as old as a 60-year-old man by Earth reckoning. Presumably, that was of his own choice, being able to look however he wanted. Any Goltaxian got to decide for themselves when to age, or if to age at all. Colbrot slid in front of her to step into the entry hall first. I have to announce you, he told her, turning away from the door. Princess Myrandae Aurelius della Francesca the 14th has returned. He spoke loudly. He turned back to her just outside the doorway. It is still the 14th, right? The princess nodded. Yeah, she answered him. I'm still on 14. She stepped into the entry hall, keeping her head low as she walked. It's true. It's me. Just don't everyone get all excited, though. I'm just here for my dad, and then I'm going to go. Just making a social call. You can all get back to what you were. She looked up to realize the entry hall was, in fact, empty. A large, quiet black stone chamber with black stone steps winding up the side of the hall to the floor above them. I feel like there should be something else there. A large, quiet black stone chamber with black stone steps winding up the side of the hall to the floor above them. There was a large black stone door beneath the stairs as well. There was a large door beneath the stairs. Well, she knew led to her father's quarters. I think I mentioned that later, but that seems like a better place to put that. Alright. Normally there would be cleaning staff and maybe I should read this whole thing again. She stepped into the entry hall, keeping her head low as she walked. No, let's not read that line again. She looked up to realize the entry hall was in fact empty. A large, quiet black stone chamber with black stone steps winding up the side of the hall to the floor above. There was a large black stone door beneath the stairs that she knew led to her father's quarters. Normally there would be cleaning staff and politicians and security staff and advisors all coming and going and bustling about. Instead, it was silent and vacant. Who were you just announcing to? She asked Colbrot, turning around on him accusingly. It's tradition, he shrugged, whether there's anyone in the palace or not. She aggressively stomped towards him, jabbing her finger in his chest. Uh-huh, and where is everyone? Your father sent them all away, Colbrot informed her. In one of his fits. Every step either of them took echoed throughout the palace like they were banging on heavy drums. And there was another sound, of a door closing on the floor above, and then her brother appeared on the stairs. At least he had her brother's face, though he had gone through a few changes. This requires a different voice. I can do this. You need to drink some of that freedom juice. Alright. I got this. Her brother. Let's go. Sister. Okay. Sister. He spoke. I heard it was you, but I didn't want to believe. He rushed down the stairs, his footsteps booming from his increased weight. Even as he reached her level, he still towered over her, a good 7 feet tall. Now, he was jacked up and beyond muscular, with bulging biceps and triceps. Just one of his arms was about as big as her whole body. His skin, like every his skin, every Goltaxian allowed to pick their own pigmentation, was blood red. Last time she'd seen him, he had been more her size and colored closer to a darker tone of Joanna's serene blue. Perhaps Colbrot had been right about a lot happening since she left. Wow, Janet, she said as he stared down at her. You've changed. I've become strong, sister, he boasted at her with a grin. Stronger now than I've ever been. He grabbed her arm above the elbow, his large hand almost as big as half her arm, and pushed her back to slam heavily into the black stone wall behind her. I don't need you anymore. You might as well leave. Return to your concubine. No one asked you to come here. Ugh. He bared his fangs at her, his blood-red face twisted in anger. Her father asked her for her. Her father asked for her. Colbrot tried to butt in with a correction. He turned on the old advisor angrily. He's a nostalgic old man and a fool. He looked his sister up and down almost hungrily. I see you didn't bother to dress appropriately for his funeral. Apparently he's Michael Dorn. He's being voiced today by Michael Dorn. I was wondering whose voice that was that I was trying to impersonate. Michael Dorn. They told me he wasn't dead yet, Miri argued with her brother, his grip tightening on her arm, and it hurt. A lot. They told me it was only a matter of time. Her brother taunted her. You're hurting me. Princess Miri pleaded with her brother, wondering if he was about to break her arm in his grasp. Good. Her brother spoke harshly, his face a mere inch from hers. Maybe you'll get the hint that this isn't a game. He let go of her and backed away. At least not one you could win. He strode down the hall to their father's bedroom, almost daring her to go after him. She just stood in her spot and waited till he was beyond the door before she allowed herself to visibly tremble. She let out a very deep breath, not even realizing she'd been holding it in. He wants to be king, Colbrot said from beside her, to send all of our people out amongst the stars in machines of war to conquer all the inhabited planets of the universe and make them kneel in his name. He's already discussed revealing ourselves to the Rexter Alliance. He thinks power and strength only exists when you flaunt it, and there is no one left in the known universe who can stop him from flaunting his power now. But you... You must be brave enough to go in there and face your father, he continued. Can you do that, Princess Myrandae Aurelius Della Francesca the 14th? Miri frowned and made a face at her once friend. I just need a moment, she said to him with frustration. Is that okay? Can I take a breath, you think, without the universe exploding? Colbrot shrugged. Perhaps. Perhaps not. Princess Myrandae laughed despite herself. I've missed you, she said to her friend. I've missed you more, he assured her in an unemotionlessly honest sort. Poke break, do. Sometimes I wake up and I think about how I like it when black people vote. And that's why I grab a Coca-Cola. But now back to the show. Princess Myrandae laughs. I've missed you. And then he says, I've missed you more, he assured her in an emotionlessly honest way. She didn't want to laugh. Besides Colbrot, everything about the palace felt wrong now. Not like the home she used to know. To say it felt unwelcoming would be an understatement. She wanted to get this visit over with. And so, with one more deep breath, she approached the large doors to her father's bedroom, down the hall beneath the stairs, and pushed them open. Excuse me. His bedroom, a familiar place Myrandae could remember playing in when she was very young. Sorry, freedom burps. For America and Canada, because I'm Canadian. His bedroom, a familiar place Myrandae could remember playing in when she was very young, was now darkened almost to a pitch black. She could only make out an outline of her father's form through the shadows, barely breathing in the bed. He was being fed nutrients intravenously, and a machine over his head kept giving off boops. Boop. 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 In the corner of the room, her brother Jamet watched on with arms crossed. The light from the EKG covered The light from the EKG over her father's head was about the only thing illuminating his face, brighter with each boop, and then back into the shadow once more. Boop, boop, boop. Now we have another voice. Oh, yes, I remember whose voice is gonna be. In the voice of the king, we've cast dying Yoda from Return of the Jedi. Okay, we got this. We got this. We're good. All right. Didn't expect you to come. The king of the Golvex system rasped out from under his bedspread, and she turned his attention. She turned her attention on him. Well, the princess muttered, shuffling closer to the bed, life can always surprise you like that. Maybe you could stick around a little bit longer and see, yeah? He laughed. It was a raspy, wet laugh. He did not sound well. I've already made up my mind. He spoke a wet, raspy voice. She almost hated seeing him like this. Hated that it would replace all the memories she had of him lively and happy. Well, it's not fair, Princess Myrandae muttered to her father. I had a whole 10-point presentation planned on the virtues of staying alive. What's never wrong? Her father asked, though she could tell it was out of only an amused curiosity. Puppies, she told him. He laughed again. What's 10? Also puppies, she said quickly, and this time he laughed so hard he started to cough. Listen, I really think you should get that looked at. It's too late for me now. There's nothing a doctor can do for me now. Her father muttered in a raspy wheeze. His hands clutched at his stomach. I need my backup. He coughed, speaking his next words slowly and clearly. I want this. Myrandae didn't know what to say. She'd never really had to suffer loss or grief before. We can rescan your mind, she tried to insist. Her father shook his head. I don't want you to. Dad, she said, that's not. You're going to let me go, her father insisted, agony on his face. Myrandae knew there were tears rolling down her neon pink face, but she ignored them as she grabbed for her father's hand. But who's going to run the kingdom? She asked her father desperately. Her father glanced to the corner of the room where her brother loomed. For yourselves. Myrandae shook her head. No, the princess argued. No, that's not good enough. You don't have a choice, her father rasped. You can't save me. The princess didn't know how long silence fell across the room, but she was the one that finally cut through it. You used to give the best speeches, she said, raising his hand and kissing it. I remember, she continued, when I was really young, like 50, I used to love your speeches. I would watch them on the hollows over and over again, pretty much on repeat. I would listen to them and I would think, that's my dad. He's so powerful. He can change the universe with just his words. Mary, her father muttered her nickname. He reached past his hands to flatten his blanket and help tuck him in better. Can't you just, do it one more time? For me? I just mean, do you think you have one more in you? For old time's sake? To make me feel young again, one more time? As she flattened the blanket against his chest, she felt something hard, almost metallic. Mary, her father said her name again. You're not a child anymore. She pulled back the covers, but his hand came up. To stop her from pulling them all the way. He looked up at her with pleading eyes. I have nothing to say to you. Finally, his grip gave way, and she was able to pull the covers off the bed and reveal the bomb her father had strapped to his torso. Oh my god, was all the princess could mutter. Sorry. His hand slipped to the bomb and he squeezed the trigger. Myrandae was frozen in shock. She didn't move, didn't even try to protect herself from the blast. Thankfully, she didn't have to. Strong hands grabbed her shoulder and began pulling her back. She could see her brother, still in the corner of the room. He was watching her with a wide smirk on his face. The bomb was mostly fitted to point inwards, but managed to disintegrate not just her father, but also tore apart the bed he was in, and would have surely caught the princess in the blast too had the hands not pulled her away and then down as the explosion went off. Colbrot tried to shield her best he could, but thankfully the blast was mostly contained, and what did spill out went over their heads. But it was loud and hot and shocking. Myrandae tried to rise, her ears ringing, her mind completely numb, and her eyes landed on her brother. He was still standing, and he didn't seem even the least bit surprised. But upon spotting her rise, his smirk began to falter. What did you... The princess began to ask him what he did. Sure, he had some part to play in this, but she couldn't even hear the words coming out of her mouth. Was she even talking? Did her voice even still work? Colbrot's hands grabbed her again, pulling her away from the room, away from her brother, away from the smoldering crater of a spot where her father once lay. Her brother just watched her, almost like he was challenging her. And then she was from the room, the doors closing behind them as Colbrot shuffled her quickly towards the landing pad. His lips were moving, but she couldn't hear him. She smacked her ears, and suddenly some of her hearing came back with a pop. Only one method your brother would agree to, for choosing which of you should rule over Goltex, Colbrot explained to Myrandae, his voice still seeming very distant even as he was standing beside her. He's going to challenge you to the right by combat. A one-on-one fight to the death in the arena. Myrandae stopped as they stepped out onto the landing pad, the megastructure of Goltex sprawling out before them. I can't fight him, she insisted to her advisor. He'll tear me apart. You can, of course, choose to nominate 2 champions in your stead, Colbrot reminded her of their ancient traditions. But then he can nominate 2 champions as well. And his friends, well, they're bigger and scarier even than him. Myrandae's jaw dropped. You're kidding, she insisted. Is that even possible? Yes, I thought that as well, Colbrot admitted. I don't have any friends who can fight people like him, the princess told her advisor. You and Joanna are all I've got. I don't even know anyone in the entire universe who... What? She stopped as a thought occurred to her head. I can think of 2 people, actually. Care to tell me who? Colbrot asked her as she trailed off, but she stopped paying him any mind as her gaze landed on a news feed. King Chithan Vega de la Francesca for the 42nd is dead. Let me try that line again. King Chithan Vega de la Francesca the 42nd is dead. She read the news ticker. Colbrot nodded. As I said, he reminded her, news travels fast in the Goltex system. Killed in a terrorist bombing, she continued to read. Believed to have been perpetrated and orchestrated by his own daughter, Princess Myrandae Aurelius de la Francesca the 14th. A warrant is out for her arrest. The grim look on her advisor's face told her that her sudden oncoming panic attack was well warranted. No doubt. The ongoing machinations of your brother, he told her, scanning the skies for approaching law enforcement. We should vacate the premises with much haste. Myrandae followed Colbrot to their transport, getting on behind him as he lifted them into the air and punched the controls to thrust them forward. As he did that, she pulled up Joanna on her personal communicator. Baby? Joanna asked through the small screen. Are you okay? The hollows are saying horrible things. Forget about that, the princess assured her. I'm okay. Can you meet me at the cloning labs in 10 minutes? Jo looked confused, scrunching her face up as her ears drooped. The cloning labs? Colbrot looked back at her, equally bewildered. I think I have an idea, Myrandae told them both. Just get there and pray for fate this works. I'm pretty sure what we're about to do has never been tried before. And that is the end of week 2. If you enjoyed that, I hope you will show that you enjoyed that by commenting on my Twitter at Andrew Geczy, that's AndrewGeczy, or you could go to 99geek.ca and comment there and let me know what you thought. There are other places you can go to comment. You can comment if you're on the if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can review it, or if you're on Podomatic listening to this, which is where I host it, you can leave a comment there, I think. You can also go to patreon.com/99geek or 99geek.ca to go to the same place. And what you can do there is you can subscribe for $1 and show your support that way, and that would be amazing. Why am I saying all this when it's all about to be covered with what I always say at the end? So let's just go with that. But for people who tune out, I beg of you, show me that you're there in some way, because it would mean the world to me, and then I would keep doing this, and it would be awesome. So please, I put so much work into this. I beg of you, just let me know you're out there. Communicate and engage with me on some level so that we can be a community of people enjoying storytelling. My name is Andrew Geczy, and my brand is 99% Geek, found at 99geek.ca. I'm a writer, writing monthly chapters of novels like episodes of TV shows, releasing them in 4 weekly segments, a teaser and 3 acts, on Sundays on my Patreon page. Every month it's a different book, over a range of genres, and they sometimes even cross over and connect. At the end of the month, the finished chapter is added to the PDFs attached at the bottom of every post. Finally, the finished books are self-published on Amazon. There's a dark fantasy story about a post-apocalyptic world where powerful royals rule and enslave the remaining people struggling to survive on the last remaining landmass. There's also a sci-fi story about a people on a dying world who have built a ship to a new one, but their project is almost brought down by a terrorist organization within their own ranks. Finally, there's a crossover story where characters from my other books are brought into the distant future where the princess of a far advanced civilization, one that lives in a solar system-sized megastructure around a Dyson Sphere, needs help defeating her twisted, power-hungry brother. And all these stories will be outside the paywall for all to enjoy as new episodes release weekly, and the finished chapters will be attached to the bottom of every post on the site in convenient PDF format, readable on computers, tablets, ebook readers, and phones at the end of the month. But that's not all my stories. There's also urban fantasy tales about a teenage girl turned into a vampire against her will, or a scorned lover investigating paranormal phenomena, or a journalist covering news and politics in the Middle East. And there's a fantasy story about a fallen angel trying to stop the end of the world. All these stories are published and available on Amazon and are also safe and sound behind the paywall in PDF format attached to an archive at the top of my Patreon page. Only viewable by subscribers, my entire library of work, thousands of pages worth, is easily accessible to every subscriber at any level. There's even a Geekly Weekly blog which covers all the news you may have missed over the week, as well as ranks a week's worth of television and makes predictions on what new pop culture things might be in the public consciousness for the next week. Finally, I do video game streams, both multiplayer matchmaking as well as single-player campaign playthroughs. You can see me play games like Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, Hitman, and more. And you can see it all in one place. So stay tuned and maybe subscribe. It's only $1 and the support you show will go a very long way, I promise. There are also higher tiers. Give $5 one month and you can name a character or location or suggest a thing you might want to see. Basically, you get to give a noun and then I promise to incorporate that noun into one of my stories somehow. Maybe not the same month you give the suggestion, but within 3 months guaranteed. No matter how crazy, you can't sabotage me, I promise. Think of it like a fun improv game, and you can keep giving nouns for every month you pay at the $5 tier. Or if you give $10, you don't get 2 nouns, but you can give a description to go with your noun. Describe the personality of your character, or the look of your location, or the importance of your item. For $10, you get a noun and a description. You can also give $1 towards supporting my efforts at video game streaming or my weekly blog if that's more where your interests lie. I'm as poor as it gets, living paycheck to paycheck and sometimes starving, so I understand if you are too. I don't want to take food out of your mouths. Your attention is enough. Say something, comment here, or at the very least, follow me on Twitter at Andrew Geczy or Instagram at WingCommander4. Live long and prosper, may the force be with you. Long live Marceline the Vampire Queen. Remember that Kong bows to no one, but Godzilla is the king of all monsters. We are the 99% Geek. I'll go to the part where I make it stop.